Hey there, a very great pleasure for me to welcome you all for the third part of a Git and GitLab tutorials for beginner series. If you haven't seen the previous parts, do watch it. The link for the same is given in the description below. In the previous part of our series, we have looked into what is Git, how does it work by installing the same and configuring it. Then we have even looked into different stages of commit with examples. Here in this part, we will be looking into the creation of repository and adding the file from modified area to staged area. Then we shall also know about the reasons for sequential stages of commits. So without wasting time, let's get started. I am Abhiram BJ, the speaker of Glue, which is one of the FOSS community. Do like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest updates by clicking the bell icon given below. As in the previous video, if we remember, we said about two ways of creating a repository. That is, the first way is to create a local repository and make it as a Git repository, and the other way is to clone a remote repository that already exists on a server. Here, we will be looking on to the first way, that is the creation by local repository. To do this, we create two directories with the two different compositions that are git1 and git2. Here, git1 is an empty directory that contains no files and subdirectories within it. And on the other hand, git2 is a directory that contains two files, that is index.html and style.css. That means git2 is a non-empty directory. Even here, we have two different ways of making a local repository to Git repository. Let's look into the first way. Here, we make an empty repository to a local Git repository. To do this, we shall use the first directory, that is git1 directory. Now, to change the current working directory to git1 directory, we use the command cd space git-1. Here, let us initialize this as a Git repository by using the command git space init, which is on executing, it says that you have initialized an empty repository with the current location having .git as its path. Now, the directory git1 is an empty local Git repository. You can get to know this by executing the command ls-a, which lists all the files and folders along with hidden files. Here, as you see the listing of hidden directory, that is .git, the presence of .git and its importance has already been described in our previous video. Now, we shall create a new file named index.html by using the command touch index.html inside the git1 repository. Now, if we check the status of Git, you will be having the file index.html in the list of untracked files with the text color as red. Here, the red color indicates that there is a modification in the local repository and its progresses are untracked. So, now we have initialized an empty directory, that is here the git1 as local Git repository. Now, we shall look on to the other way of making a Git repository from a local repository that already contains files in it. To do this, we will be using the directory named git-2, which has index.html and style.css in it. We shall change the present working location to git2 directory by using the command cd space git-2 and start initializing the Git repository by executing git init. Now, the git2 is a local Git repository. If you check the status of the files in git2 repository, the files are in red, that our files are modified but are not tracked by Git. Now, we got to know how to create a local Git repository. As for now, whatever changes that we made to our local Git repository were all untracked, as every file was in the modified stage. In case if you don't know about the different stages of commit, do watch our previous video, the link is given in the description below. As we have already explained the different stages of commit in previous video, if you want the Git to track your modified file, then you have to place it in the staged area. So now we shall move on how to change files from modified phase to staged area. Let's take the example of my project repository that we used in the previous video. Here, if we check the status of the files, they are indicated as untracked, that means they are in modified stage. If you tend to commit these modified files to a local repository without pushing to the staged area, they won't get committed, as only the files in the staged area are allowed to get committed, but not to the files in modified area. Till now, we have only initialized an empty Git repository. Now, we shall look into some git bash commands that are required to add the files to the staged area. Once you have initialized the Git repository, you can check the status of the Git repository by using the command git status, which tells you the current status of the files that resides within your local Git repository. In your terminal, by default, if you get the names of the files in red color and placed under the untracked files, then it represents that they are in modified stage. And if you get the names of the files in green color, then it represents that the files are in stage area and is ready to get committed. You can customize the colors as per your interest. Here, in our example of my project repository, both the files are in modified stage. To add the single file, that is here index.html to staging area, we use the command git space add index.html. This command adds only one file, that is index.html, to staged area. Now, if we check the status of the repository by using the command git status, you have two types of files, one in modified stage, that is style.css, depicted in red, and the other in staged area, that is index.html, depicted in green. Now, if you want to remove the file index.html from staged area and return back it to the modified stage, you can use the command git space rm -- cached index.html. This moves back the file index.html to modified stage. As for now, we were only adding one file to the staging area at a time. Now, we shall add many number of files from a modified area to staging area. To do this, we use the command git add space dot. This command moves all the files that resides in the local Git repository to the staging area. Here, if we use the same command for our example and check the status of our working directory, we get to know that both index.html and style.css presently are in staging area and are depicted in green color. Now, if we make a commit to Git repository, Git takes both the files index.html and style.css as committed files, as both were in staging area. So, for now, we got to know about how to check the status of working Git repository and way to add files from modified stage to staging area. Now, you may be wondering why you have to follow the sequence of modified, staged, and commit. And also you may think that we can push files from modified area directly into committing area. But let me answer this question. Suppose if you add the files directly from modified area to committed area, your files won't get tracked but about its changes. And if once committed, further modifications cannot be checked. Here, adding the files directly from modified area to committed area is practically not allowed and impossible in this Git. So, here the tracking part is done by pushing the files to staging area where every progress of your local repository gets tracked and can be easily reverted. And by having staged area before commit, you can also recheck for further modification that has to be done for the files in the staging area before it gets committed. So basically, the staged area acts as a snapshot of the changes that you make on the files, and it is also like the checkpoint for the commit that is to be made. And commit should be made only at the logical completion of your code. So this was all about the creation of repository and keeping track of the files in the repository. That's it for this video. In the next video, we will look into the important part of Git, that is committing. Do like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for further updates by clicking the bell icon given below. Thank you guys. Happy exploring. Let's meet in the next video.